Okay, Russell in California, I got your new Stryker here. Oops, sorry, got a little piece of tape on there. 955 HPC. This is the serial number right here. So right now I'm testing the FM deviation. This is the factory setting. Alright, so if we look here where it says deviation, you'll see it's about 3.7 kilohertz. So what we want to go for is about 4. So we can improve that a little bit, and I'll do that now. Alright, so we got that all set. We're right at about 4, which is perfect. Now keep in mind, 4 is for amateur radio. For CB radio, it's going to be about 2. So if you talk to someone on a CB radio, you're probably going to sound a lot louder to them than what you do to somebody on an amateur radio. Here's the low power FM. Here's the radio's frequency. I say this is in the service mode. That's the frequency that it defaults to for whatever reason. And this is the radio's high power on FM right here, so you can see that. And still the same frequency, give or take. Alright, this can be your high power on an AM, about 8, and I'm going to set the low power to 1. Alright, here's the low power modulation, so obviously it's a little low. It's showing up here, the depth is about 60-some%, so we're going to increase that. Now this isn't going to be as accurate as what the oscilloscope is for AM, so we're going to want to mention that. But we're going to look at our oscilloscope here. The number here is about 2 something, so when that doubles, we're going to say about 430 is going to be our 100% mark. Hit the wrong button, I paused the phone camera. So I'm going to modulate this again. You can see where it spiked way up and then it cut way back. That's the AMC crunching it. It's what it's supposed to do. I don't know why anyone in the right mind would disable that, but hey, I guess it is what it is. So there's about our 100% mark there. And we can take that a little bit farther probably without any negative consequences here. So just keep going with it some. You take it too far, like that's too far right there. So I'm going to look at it a little bit closer now. That's where you got to have a scope, one that you can really magnify to really see what's going on in between. Because the way this modulation circuit's designed, it really stretches. When you look at it zoomed out, it stretches out, and that doesn't look, you know, the best there when it's stretched out. But when you magnify it, that's where you can actually see the big picture there. So that's about good. Don't want to go too much farther. So let's start over where we were, about 2 something there, and now we're at like 6 something. So you guys can figure 100%, and what's the next one? 200%. So about 200%, I think, which is a lot. It's probably not going to be that much with voice. But that's what it does with the tone. So it's real impressive. These have always been impressive for that. I'm sorry, I calculated that wrong. That's about 150%. So 200% would be the full extension, which if we were to push it harder, obviously it'll exceed that, but then you're negative pinching and just downright disgusting. So it's definitely not something that you want to do with this. That's what happens when you go all the way, or whatever you want to call it. You know, it's just horrible. So, and then if you look in the middle, you can see it's just flatlined completely. So, and it's off the chart there. So, and if you bring it back slightly, and, you know, my meter's freaking out too. So, there's like 200% right there. We times that original number by about 4, but it's just way too much. So you can't go that much. You need to tame it down some. I mean, you can go that much, but it's just all distortion and fake power. So that's that high average power stuff that is real impressive on the watt meter, but not so impressive on the peak, on the equipment. Okay, here's your high power modulation, so about 8 watts. And we're going to modulate it. See that number there? Should double. You can see where the AMC kind of released a little bit and then it crunched. Now that does happen with voice. so it's a little less aggressive with voice than it is locking with the 1 kilohertz tone. So you can see we're at like 1 volt, and we started at what, about 500 millivolts. So we're right around where we should be. And then if we take a look at it up here, this is going to be a plot diagram here, a plot of the power in relation to frequency, and you can see it's in dBm. So marker number 1 is the center of the frequency, and you can see these markers are correlated on the graph here. You can see my mouse is moving the pointer. So as we look at like number 8 and number 9, see over here the power is greatly reduced way over there, and that's how it should look. Let me X out of this, and now we can just look at it in a blown up view a little bit more. This is 20 kilohertz here. You can see span 20 kilohertz, stop frequency 215, which is here, and start frequency 195, which is here. So everything is the same. Resolution bandwidth's very low. Like, I could actually go lower, but this is good enough, 30 hertz. So that's where we're looking there. So it's looking mighty clean. If we want to span out a little bit, we could do that in just a second. Alright, here's a little bit different view. You can see everything's here. Start frequency here is channel 1. Channel 20 is up here where the little marker is. Stop frequency is 27445. So you can see that there. There's our span. Resolution bandwidth is now 100 hertz, so a little more responsive, faster. We can do the peak table again. Now we're going to see that obviously all the power is here. You can see it's the numbers are right around the base frequency where our transmission is. Very little power, even close to the next frequency down or up, and it doesn't pick anything else up anywhere else. So it's well rounded, just where it should be. So it's working well. I don't have a thermal imaging thing where I can show you the temperature of the radio, but it's pretty hot. Like, I'm touching the heat sink here with my hand. I mean, it's not burning me or anything like that, but it's definitely warm, and the frequency's pretty much spot on like it always will be. So not really hot on the sides or anything. These, they cool well. You can sit here probably and keep this keyed like this all day. Probably wouldn't self-destruct or anything. Very unlikely, but I don't think anyone really would want to either. But just for demonstration here, I mean, you'd think it'd be scorching hot considering. There's the waveform. I don't know if I zoomed in on it or not, but there it is. I mean, I could go a little bit more, but there's really no point. It's gonna work well right where it's at. Alright, here's the sideband. This is the two-tone, so it's obviously not very good. They're kind of all like this, any tone, these. They all share this, unfortunately, so we can try to correct it, but here it is up here. So if we go to the table, this is an upper sideband. Marker 1. It's there. These are our 2 pips. 1 and 2. The rest of this stuff is just information. So what you'll notice here is if you look in here and here, like the 5 and the 8, the power is greatly reduced, but it's still there's some power there. I like to see that all lower. So what I'll do is start to lower this down. And we'll look at this. We want to make this nice and round. It's looking much better now. Go back to that original view. Whoops. It's starting to look nice and round all the way through, which is good. Power's going to drop some. Obviously, less information, not as much, higher up. Proportion wise, it's still about the same. It's more the design of the power amplifier in these radios. For whatever reason, they may not be as linear as one would like, but they work well. I mean, for the price point that we're at, you know, these radios are a little more money than some of the Anytone options, but it still works well. It's hard to compare it to some of the more extensive testing that I could do that I'm not going to do on this video, but there's obviously going to be other radios that have a better overall linearity on the transmission, but these do pretty good for what they are. No complaints. Alright, just one more thing to show really quick here. The testing. So I'm putting in a 30 millivolt peak-to-peak signal into the radio on AM, so we're modulating basically. Here we go. So we got, so this is going to show us all of our standard harmonics. We'll go out to the 10th. So that's where we're at there. You can see all the these are the fundamental harmonics. You times this number, transmit frequency by 2, that's that one, by 3, by 4, 5, so on and so forth. So these are not spurious emissions, these are normal harmonics. And you can see the power here. It's about 8.5 watts right there. In dBm to watts, if you do the calculation, it's about 8.5 watts. And then you can see all these numbers here are registered in DVC. They're all negative, which is great. No big weird spikes anywhere with a positive number or anything like that. So these are all the normal harmonic frequencies. You know, the 10th is obviously 272.05, so they're getting lower. A couple maybe not as low, they'll run the 136, but for the most part they're all really low. I mean, this is outstanding where we're at in power versus where we're at in all these numbers. So it's working well, and that's the point of the test here. Alright, last test I want to show, which I've already kind of showed it before, but some may not understand exactly what they're seeing on the screen of the spectrum analyzer. And a lot of guys probably have like a radio that has a pan adapter, something like that, where you can see the color and whatnot. So you can see the scope here. This is still on AM, but here's the spectrum monitor on the spectrum analyzer. You can see the information up above here. Let me grab my pointer on the mouse and I can kind of point it out to you guys. So here it is here. That's the stop frequency over here, start frequency over here. Center is our frequency we're on. And you can see the color information here. The darkest is where the power is. So the blue is the least power. So you can see it's a nice solid line of power there. So hopefully that makes sense to those that may not understand exactly what they're seeing here. You can also see it in a color view. So either way, it still looks really good. Alright, we're just checking the receiver here. I'm letting the transmission side cool off a little bit before I do the final power check. They're going to be somewhere between 50 and 60 watts. So there's where we're coming in, about minus 114 dBm, 30% modulation. I pulled out my old HP out of the storage because I haven't used it in a long time, and I figured I might as well just add it up here. I already have a way more capable Rigel, but this still works really well, so I like to get some use out of it. I spent pretty decent money on it back when I got it, so you know, it's still a fully functioning working old unit. So, you know, the Rigel's just sitting here, it's on and everything, I can use it, but I'm just not using it today. So we're right about 12 there, actually maybe just a tad bit over, which is perfect. Okay, here's sideband. We can shut the modulation portion off for that, which I've done. Minus 128.5. This is hooked up to the reference oscillator that I have, the GPS one, same as all this other stuff here. They're all hooked up. So where are we at? Oh, right here. Okay, right at 12, so that's working well. So I did go through and align all the points for 1, 3, 5, 7, 9, and then 60 on AM, FM, and the sidebands. So that's done per the information from Stryker, so it's done the right way. And the meter will probably be just a tad bit more accurate that way. I don't know why they don't do that at the factory as well, but anyhow, it's done for you. I think the radio's probably cooled enough now. We're just gonna see how it works on power, and then we're gonna ship it off to you on Monday, just like I said. Unfortunately, I couldn't get to it any sooner. Sorry about that. Alright, so here's sideband power. The RF power controls all the way up. So just remember with these, you're not going to see a lot of power on the meter. So 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, check, check. It's going to be what it's going to be there. The power is there. It's just not read very accurate on the power scale here. So I think, what are we seeing at the most, like 20 to 30, maybe at the most, sometimes less. So we're going to reference the power meter for that because that's kind of where it counts. So here's our power on the radio, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, and I did turn it down quite a bit to clean up the signal on these because as I showed before, they're pretty dirty on the output if you don't do that. So having a 60, 70, 80 watt radio on sideband here wouldn't be really productive for us. This is going to work much better here, and it's pretty close to 60 anyways. I think these are rated at 60, so we're doing well. Obviously, if you turn that down, this is 12 o'clock. So at 12 o'clock there, we do a little bit less. And then all the way down is going to be extremely less there. So 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, check, check. So there's your sideband. Here's our AM right here. Trying to adjust the slider on the microphone so that when I start talking, before I start talking into the mic, it doesn't pick it up falsely. So we're still right about close to 60 where we should be, and falling back to about 8 or so there. So that's all the way up on the carrier right there, which is good. Here's 12 o'clock, just under 4 watts. At 12 o'clock, it's still going to swing everything. You probably get a little more audio actually right there anyways if you want. And then all the way down, it's about 1. About 1, and you know, you can see at times it's going to unleash a little bit and it is going to really swing up. So these are a little more susceptible to that slow delay on the AMC circuit, which gives you that big sense of big peak power from a low dead key. It's not really ideal to run it down this low, but you can. I mean, if you're going to run it into something, it's going to drive it really hard, but it all depends at the end. Whatever you like, if you were to put this into something else, it's more about what you're using after the radio that's really going to justify the whole characteristic of the transmission. Some of the amplifiers being produced, although they create a lot of power, that's kind of where it ends. Yes, they create a lot of power, but everything else that they create with it isn't really desired, and it really wreaks havoc on the band. So just keep that in mind. If you have a very professional, like amateur radio grade amplifier, then obviously the performance is going to be greatly increased. In turn, so does the amount of money that something like that costs. So not everybody wants to go that route, but I really encourage those that can to do that, because a lot of these, for better or worse, these amplifiers that are made cost effectively, and I guess power effectiveness and cost effectiveness kind of go hand in hand. Everybody wants the most power for the least amount of money. I think we could all agree on that, but that doesn't always mean you get a really quality amplifier out of it. And talking about amplifiers, we're not really concerned with, at least I'm not, with like these frequencies. It would be more like, you know, up in here, which I'd have to go to VFO mode to get it. Now, I could operate here with my license, but anyhow, that's where I'd be most concerned, running a quality amplifier. And really, if you don't have the license and you're still gonna, I guess, run an amplifier wherever you choose to run, you should really want a quality over just low price point with high power, because with anything, that's not always gonna work out the best for you. And keep in mind, all the testing I do here is on a bird coaxial dummy load resistor, so I don't transmit the stuff on the air on these channels, and that's up to the users. I got no control over that. I do this because it does enable the 12 meter option as well, and we can see that. Where is that? Actually, you need to go into VFO for that. So you go into VFO, and I can show you that really quick how to get there. So what we'll do is go to the menu, hold the function, and go to it. Channel selector, I want it to go megahertz. So now we're going to go megahertz. Whoop. Auto squelch, we don't want to. Alright, let's get out of that. So now we're going to go to megahertz. So now we can do 12 meter on this amateur radio. It should be called a dual band amateur radio because it will also do the 12 meter band now. And obviously, you know, you can use your function menu here to maneuver around. So if I want to go 10 kilohertz and dial this up to the band. So there we go. Now we're somewhere within the band. Now of course you can go back and switch that to whatever you want. You don't have to use this either. You could make this the 1 megahertz. You can totally configure both by just holding the function. Fine. Also we'll change some. Let's see, we want to go 5K. Now we're going 5K. You know, you'd have to center your, you could go 1K here as well, which would kind of give you the ability to move around the band a little bit faster. It is a little harder, you know, at first to get it set up how you want it. Whoop. So we'll go 1K here and key up to get out of that. So now we're in 1K. If we want to move around a little faster, we can go 5K, 1K to kind of dial somebody in. You could also go less with the course if you wanted to. Because some guys don't always operate on the 0 or a number. They may operate off the last digit as well. So you're going to have to play around with that if you want to use this as an amateur radio. But it's very useful for that in the VFO mode. And I would really recommend, if you're going to use this, use it in the VFO mode. Once you get it set up right, it's really easy to just maneuver around wherever you want to go, kind of thing. You can go 5K steps and 1K steps, whatever you want to do. If you go into the band setting, then it eliminates that, and now we're just in the, you know, in the band setting here. So if we go up into 10 meter in the band setting, now we're just kind of stuck with what we have here, the odd splits and stuff that the radio's programmed with. Now you can go into the computer programming software and switch all that if you want to. You can download that on Stryker's website, but as you can see, I mean, this is in 1K. It's kind of preset, so I prefer the VFO mode, and then you can maneuver around quite easily by just switching this. If you want to go from 10 meter really, or 12 meter to 10 meter, just hold that in and tap it until you see the frequency option, which is channel selector CHS. We'll go to 1 megahertz. And then we'll bump this up to 10 meter, let's say, and then we'll go back in. And it does take a little bit of time, but you can get used to it. So now we'll go to 100 kilohertz just to get us where we want to go faster, like that. Now we're within, you know, if you have a general or extra, you can obviously use this up here, but the techs and stuff can use this. And now we'll go back and switch that back to, let's say, 5 kilohertz. And so on and so forth. So now we're in the 5 kilohertz step, and then 1 kilohertz here. So you can maneuver wherever you want to go in the 10 meter band also. So hopefully that makes sense to some. This does have the repeater capability too, to do 10 meter repeaters and stuff like that. So it's a fully functioning amateur radio, although a lot would probably say, oh, that's just a junky CB radio, but ideally you can use it as amateur radio. If you don't know how to use it, then you just don't know how to use it. You have to take the time to learn. And you know, those that would criticize this radio say, oh, it's just a CB, you know, well, you could say that, but you could say that with any radio, because you could make any HF amateur radio do those frequencies as well. So I don't really buy into that. This is a full-fledged amateur radio if that's what you want it to be, by just using it like this. And I could work contacts on 10 meter all day just by these two buttons here, or these two controls. You can maneuver around quickly, and if you get bored on 10 and 12 is open, dial yourself back down to 12 and away you go. Alright, Russell, well, long enough video I think here. Hope you enjoy it. We'll get it ready to ship off to you tomorrow. 7-3. Thanks.